Hello, my name's Elijah Wells, and today's review is the 1997 movie by Hikiano, The End of Evangelion. Taking place after the events of episode 24, while ignoring the events of the highly controversial episodes, being episode 25 and 26, NERV is under attack of not just more angels, but this time by its own committee, SEAL, who are going out of their way to raid into the NERV headquarters and execute any staff members, and of course, Gento has other plans, as in triggering the third impact, which is essentially bringing all of humanity into one single entity by essentially just wiping them all out. While Shinji, it just wallows on about his self-hatred after the events of episode 24. After the divisive reaction from episode 25, 26, as in the last two episodes of the Neon Genesis Evangelion series, the fans of course demanded a new ending, and they kinda did it with the death and rebirth of Evangelion, not just with Hikiano's mental state and that he was open about his battle with the depression, but he was also receiving death threats from one of the more angry fractions of the fan community of Evangelion. So, a new movie was essentially made, thus being the end of Evangelion, which should tighten all the loose ends and answer a lot of unanswered questions that were bouncing about, particularly during the Neon Genesis Evangelion series. And of course, this was not exactly the happy ending a lot of fans depicted, even though the movie has gone on to receive some of the biggest acclaim that the animation has ever seen. Not just a massive cult following, being a lot of people's great films of all time list, and even is and still is the highest rated animated movie on Letterboxd, like at number 23 between like Dark Knight and Dune 2, which is again a pretty big deal for animation. And particularly how very troublesome the production was, particularly with episodes 25, 26, which saw the franchise go into more of an experimental, more abstract direction with its narrative and animation, which definitely did turn off a lot of fans off. So, what to say, the end of Evangelion, what to say, goes into a bit more of a slightly weirder direction while still keeping in tune throughout most of the tone and the narrative choices that are Neon Genesis Evangelion. And a cult following towards end of Evangelion is no different from just that one Letterboxd review and critics and fans really liking it. It's just because not just it only just recently had its 25th anniversary re-release, and also it's been brought up by Hikiano that he may or may not be doing the Evangelion series again, even though Thrice Upon a Time, being 3.1 or 1.0, is essentially the last ever installment of Evangelion, but also that unfortunately Studio Gainax has filed for bankruptcy recently, which is a real shame unfortunately. Not just they made other hugely respected animes like Fooly Cooly, Gurren Lagann or Nadia, but also their magnum opus being Evangelion, which is again a little bit sad, but I'm just hoping the studio does see it through for another day at least, even though I'm not sure how likely it is it's going to go through, but again I'm just hoping it'll be they pull out of bankruptcy and still continue to make a lot more great stuff in the near future. The sheer emotional weight of this movie does carry through, particularly in a lot of film scenes, like young Shinji playing in a sandbox while playing with two dolls, then two dolls go away and he just smashes the sand pyramid, which is in the shape of the headquarters of NERV. Again, the scene has been seen as an allegory of how he personally handles rejection and how he copes with the strange relationship he has with his father and the really difficult relationship he has with NERV, which is, again, like everyone has said about this movie, there's no right or wrong answer about how you want to allegorically feel about this movie and what lane are you going to take it into. And again, the emotional weight of the movie does culminate into other scenes like the live action scene, which is often considered one of the more famous sequences in the movie, where the movie does switch into live action with a meaning of that otakus, or anime fans as they're usually referred to in Japan, telling them that there's a much bigger world outside rather than just Evangelion, and sometimes you just need to go outside and just appreciate everything that goes around you. Don't literally like anime and fantasies. And also the final and more emotionally draining scene, and it's definitely when Shinji essentially chokes Asuka, and Oscar is still alive and says to him, "How disgusting," or "I feel sick," depending what version you watch it, either dub or sub, or the original or Netflix dub. Again, this is a really ominous scene that suggests that this movie is essentially like a Adam of Eve 2, as in they're two of the first humans of the world, but Adam, instead of giving the apple to Eve, Eve giving the apple to Adam, Adam essentially chose Eve, which is again a bit ominous and a bit daunting. Particularly, this is how I would essentially describe the tone of the movie, as in pretty ominous and again a bit daunting at best, but in a way that it kind of washes over you both visually and sonically. Hikiano's direction and his animation style does gleam a lot better, particularly in the scenes during when, well, the majority of nerds unfortunately gets massacred by Seal, and how it just pulls into this, just feels really crushing with each member getting killed off one by one, and you just see the absolute corpses just lie around and just pile up in the hallways and the corridors, and just a very grim and bleak scene to go through. And of course the third impact, which is essentially the end of the world. Again, even though the scene has been, as well as much of the movie, has been up to debate about its allegory, but it's also a part of meme culture at this point, as the entirety of the human race is pretty much now sucked into one complete entity, thus wiping out the human race. Again, the animation, this scene has been a major focal point, not just for its famous iconography, which does borrow from a lot of Catholicism, Judaism, and Christianity as well, which again, even though the religious allegories and symbolism and imagery may turn some people off for a handful of instances, but for me personally, I do greatly appreciate it as well, which is something I do really like about Evangelion, as it's pretty rebellious and pretty transgressive towards the entirety of the state of animation as well as anime, in my opinion, as it completely breaks every known convention that's pretty much in the rule book about how you would approach this in animation and in anime, let alone even in live action, particularly how it deals with those themes as well. Even the film's music is definitely a massive focal point, and definitely a massive point of why people do hold the end of Evangelion to a majorly high degree, particularly with Komm so Tod, which is German for Come Sweet Death, which is a very sweet, sweeping pop song about how you basically let everyone down and it all comes tumbling down, and you basically wish to turn back time and wish things could just be better in an alternate timeline. Again, a very sweet instrumentation that essentially washes over you, but lyrically it's just like the movie, it's really ominous, it's just really grim, it just makes you just lean forward just in intention, like, and it's also played during the third impact scene, pretty much a nice, calm, sweeping soundtrack towards the end of the world. Whereas most movies, let's say Res, go documentary style with their end of the world scene, with Sheffield getting nuked, basically do its most documentary style, but it definitely reminds me more of like the Stanley Kubrick movie, Doctor Strangelove, where at the end of the movie, the nuclear warfare unfortunately kicks off, and the song We Will Meet Again by Vivian Lean plays in the background, like, we will meet again, don't know where. Basically, we will meet again, particularly even if it means going through a nuclear holocaust, like in Doctor Strangelove. And Come So Tod essentially does that, but in my opinion, with the same level of execution as Doctor Strangelove. Not in the sense of a nice sweeping song to play for ironic reasons, but in a nice sweeping song with a somewhat of an ominous and always killing lyricism to be played during some sort of an end of the world scenario. The music does shine through again, particularly with the Sebastian Bach song Jesus Joy of Man's Desiring, particularly in the live action sequence. Again, this movie, kind of like this song, it's a bit of a complete left turn, as I would say, particularly in this scene where it just goes back into live action for reasons I did explain already, but again, particularly with the very mellow, very chill background music, and already pretty damning and pretty grim view, particularly about the end of the world, and just cut it into live action. As basically a reminder to all the fans that watch it, like, there is the real world, just enjoy and appreciate the time you have here. Again, like I said earlier, there is no right and there's no wrong answers of how you were to approach not just this film, but also a series about the series, Neon Genesis Evangelion. Either if you look at face value or in an allegorical sense, this movie pretty much will, no matter how many reviews you will take of it, you're bound to learn new things about it. Like I said earlier, that there is no right or wrong answers about how you're going to approach Evangelion. Like, I've even brainstormed some allegories I took from the end of Evangelion, and more broadly the series as well. Like, what could it all be about? I've got some answers. I kind of wouldn't say I would have got some answers, but I just wanted you to pick apart in the comments or just look up it on Reddit. Like, it could, the series itself and the movie itself could be an allegory for, let's say, alcoholism, or fate versus free will, alienation, episode 25, 26, we're all just a dream, the patriarchy, particularly about Shinji and Gento's really bad relationship, and Shinji's really bad relationship with Nerve, nuclear warfare, Japan's relationship with the military, Japan during World War II, depression, end times, childhood trauma, the depopulation of Japan, Haki Anno's mental state, particularly in this movie, or Christianity. Like I said, its symbolism does pop up here and there, not just in this movie, but particularly in this series. Like, even though the aliens in the movie are referred to as angels, like, okay, cool name, a little bit weird, but could be a little bit on there. But the more you think about it, like, it could be seen as a more of a direction that man asked for help after half of the human race got wiped out in the year 2000 in the Evangelion timeline. They asked for help, and the angels were to help, but a man destroyed the angels. Then they tried to destroy God, and then man destroyed themselves and destroyed the world. And I've got this from the Letterboxd review, which, again, I'm not sure if it's the right or wrong answer you want to approach it with, but it does feel like a very fitting way to look into the series as a whole, if you want to look at it into a way of Christianity, for example. Even though the movie does get jam-packed with a lot of philosophical questionings and some philosophical discussions, particularly about Shinji's viewpoint on his relationship with father and Nerve and people around him, particularly with Rei and Asuka as well. But the movie does feel like it goes really deep into the philosophical and particularly not just the viewpoints of pessimism, positivity, and nihilism and optimism, but it also does majorly reference stuff like the creation narrative, Noah's Ark, and the eventual flooding, and also the Book of Revelation, which particularly towards the end does majorly talk in great lengths about, or does get, and as well does get referenced quite a bit. So even though this is something I find deeply intriguing in my opinion, even though yes, it may turn a lot of people off, but it's something I found something incredibly intriguing, not just on an artistic level, but on the level that is both philosophically engaging in my opinion. For End of Evangelion, this is not just a reflection of the otaku community, but not just a reflection of the series itself, but also, I think at best, this film is a pretty much how it looks into the mind of its director, Haki Anno, and his state on depression, and how he was mentally feeling around that point. Not just he had one of the most famous series around that point, ending what a lot of fans around that point consider to be majorly disappointing, but even though, in my opinion, about episode 25, 26, I do definitely like the more abstract and a massive left turn it was throughout, if you look at it in the broad sense of the series. But also, it does feel, he does come back to Evangelion again, particularly with the rebuild films from 2007 to 2021, where it officially ended with Rise Upon a Time, or 3.0 and 1.0, which is again a major testament to his artistic credibility. Not just he directed Shin Godzilla, he also directed Gunbusters, he's also directed quite a lot of anime stuff, he's also done a lot of stuff in live action as well, and he's also very close friends with Hayao Miyazaki, so much so that he voiced the main character in Wind Rises and also helped out in animation, particularly in Nazca Valley of the Wind, which is again, this movie is essentially a pinnacle of his filmography, not just in anime, but also in live action, and also in Japan cinema, and as well in live action cinema as well. The movie's philosophical themes are definitely broad and definitely maybe a bit overpowering for a lot of people for them to understand, but the point is, sometimes you don't have to understand it. Sometimes people have a different way of comprehending such themes and ideas about the series and as well about the films and the characters' choices and how it reflects the people around them, almost essentially like a ripple effect, and how they all process their own trauma and their own concerns, and how they pretty much process their own anxieties and how they try and move on around it, which is again, it's not just about Gundam, it's not about robots, it's about how do you want to move on and how do you want to go forward with your life, and how do you want to go forward, particularly as the world were to go to end. So, for End of Evangelion, I am feeling a 10 out of 10. So, what do you think of the End of Evangelion? Let me know down in the comments below, subscribe to my channel, like this video, and also follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Letterboxd, and this is Elijah Wells, and bye!